Okay, so Rudy Giuliani, former New York mayor, right?
Mhm.
He was recently disbarred in D.C. and New York for trying to overturn the 2020 election. But this deep dive, it isn't just about Giuliani and his, downfall. We're going deeper here. We're exploring how to protect our courts from this kind of pressure in the future. Because this is about way more than just one lawyer, right?
Absolutely. Giuliani was not alone. After the 2020 election, there was this wave of similar behavior from lawyers pushing these election fraud claims with zero evidence.
Yeah, the articles you shared, they mentioned some pretty wild accusations. Voting machines being controlled by dead Venezuelan leaders. It's come on.
Right. Sounds more like a conspiracy theory than a courtroom.
Exactly.
And that's just it. These cases were mostly dismissed. But the lack of evidence was really striking. It's the goal wasn't always to win, but to use the courts to undermine faith in the election itself.
So even though the claims were baseless, they still did damage.
No, absolutely.
Shouting fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
Even if there's no real danger, the panic it causes.
It's real.
Very real.
You're spot on. The damage here is to our trust in our institutions. When people lose faith in the legal system, it weakens our democracy.
Okay, so we have lawyers abusing the system. Chaos, distrust. But back to Giuliani for a sec. His punishment, disbarment, that's incredibly rare. What does that tell us?
It tells us his actions were seen as really, really bad. Disbarment, that's not something that happens lightly. It's the most serious sanction.
So it's not just breaking the rules. It's he attacked the entire legal system.
Exactly. Giuliani's case shows how vulnerable our courts are and how important it is to insurrection-proof them, to use that term.
So how do we actually insurrection-proof the courts? Is that even possible?
That's the question, isn't it? And honestly, there are no easy answers. The legal system, it moves slowly, Disciplinary actions, they can take years.
Oh, wow. So by the time someone like Giuliani actually faces consequences, the damage is already done.
That's the thing. That's the challenge here. But that article you shared, it had some interesting ideas. One idea, what if courts issued directives that give judges more power to dismiss lawsuits? The ones that are clearly baseless.
Right.
Imagine lawyers have to present real evidence right from the start.
Wow. That would be huge. No more delaying tactics.
Exactly.
No more just throwing accusations out there with zero proof.
It's about making sure there are consequences for abusing the legal system, especially when it comes to our elections.
Because those are really the foundation of our democracy, right?
Exactly.
And speaking of consequences, we have to talk about the Supreme Court. They made that ruling recently about immunity for state officials. And it's got some people worried.
Right. You're talking about the case that basically protects state officials, even if they break federal election law.
That's the one. So could that embolden people to interfere with elections, knowing they might be legally off the hook?
It's a valid concern for sure. But remember, even some of the Trump-appointed judges, they didn't want to get involved in overturning the 2020 election.
Okay, so there's hope. Maybe they learned something from all that.
Yeah.
But how does this all connect back to insurrection proofing?
Well, that's the interesting part. What if lower courts start taking a harder line, demanding evidence up front, quickly dismissing those frivolous lawsuits?
Yep.
Could that actually deter the Supreme Court from getting involved in future elections at all?
So it's if the lower courts shut down those bad claims right away, it could stop things from going to the Supreme Court at all.
Exactly. It's about making the whole system stronger against these types of threats.
Okay, so for our listeners, what's the takeaway here?
Well, this isn't just about lawyers and judges. This is about our elections, and that affects everyone. It's so important to understand these issues, to understand what's really at stake. Being a good citizen means being informed.
It's like they say, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, right?
Yeah.
We can't just assume our democracy will always be there.
Exactly.
We have to protect it actively.
Absolutely. We need to pay attention to the courts, hold those in power accountable, and speak up when someone tries to undermine democracy.
Well said. That's a good reminder that we all have a role to play here. So that wraps up our Don't Die for today. But before we go, we want to leave you with one last thought. If courts are where we defend our democracy, what's our responsibility to understand these issues and to hold our legal system accountable? This is The Deep Dive, signing off. Until next time, stay curious.
Turn the dial to the daily news. Turn the dial to the daily news. Turn the dial to the daily news. Bringing voices, headlines, to choose. turn the dial to the daily news.